Hi there, my name is Anna Whitehouse and I'm a Professor of the History of Modern Monarchy at City University of London. Now, The Independent asked you to ask me some questions about King Charles's coronation, so let's have a look at what you asked. First question is one many on Twitter seem to have asked. Now that the Queen has gone, isn't it time for the monarchy to end? I don't see much interest in these two greedy people and their gold coaches and thrones. Hashtag abolish the monarchy, hashtag not my king, cancel the coronation and feed the poor. I think it's certainly interesting that we have seen the polls shifting somewhat in the last few weeks and months from a pretty stable position during the reign of the late Queen, where 2/3 majority of people supported the monarchy, and the personal approval ratings of Queen Elizabeth were in the 80s or 90s. Now, for King Charles, the personal ratings are in the 60s. For William, actually, it's higher than that. But what is shifting is support for the monarchy as an institution. So now there's a kind of core 25% who are opposed to it. And more specifically, recent polling which has asked whether the government, in other words, the taxpayer, should pay for the coronation. A vast majority of people, particularly younger people, say absolutely not. So, is it time to abolish the monarchy? I think it's certainly time to ask some questions that perhaps haven't been asked before about the monarchy and to scrutinise it in a way that hasn't been before. And then I think it remains to be seen whether people believe the monarchy is something that represents Britain today. Many will say it is about entrenched white privilege, hierarchy, and it says nothing about the kind of Britain that we are, and we certainly should be. Somebody asked, how much does the British royal family generate in income for the UK economy? Do they bring in more than is spent on them? Now, this is a tricky question in a way, and a tricky answer to be specific about. Certainly supporters of the monarchy always argue how much the monarchy brings in for the UK economy, and that abolishing the monarchy would be, shooting ourselves in the foot when it came to the economy. And the argument goes that people come to Britain to see Buckingham Palace, to explore Royal London in particular, but also that the soft diplomacy of the monarchy and the royal family add to a sense of a brand Britain that countries and companies want to invest in, and indeed that helps forge trade relationships. The contrary argument is, well, wouldn't people come to Britain anyway? And certainly if we abolish the monarchy now, of course, Buckingham Palace would still be there. Arguably, people would have perhaps more access to it and would be able to visit it more because more of it would be opened up. We also have to acknowledge how much wealth is, in a way, captured by the monarchy, by the royal family. There is so much wealth. Much of it, we have no idea quite the extent of the wealth, both of the monarchy and all the priceless properties, artifacts and so on, but also just the private wealth of the family itself. So I don't think it's an easy argument to make that simply the royal family bringing more than they cost us. And they do cost us, make no mistake. The sovereign grant, yes, is money paid to the royal family for their costs, if you like, for their expenses. And yes, that money comes from the Crown estate, so arguably it comes from the estates of the Crown. But of course, those estates, if we didn't have a monarchy, would be used in other ways too. It's also the case that, for example, the cost of the coronation, the security, the policing, is going to be paid by the taxpayer. Huge amounts of money. So does the monarchy bring in more than it costs us? That's not an easy question. And I don't think that those who defend the monarchy should feel that that's a particularly strong argument. I think there's lots of counterpoints. Why are we not using this as an opportunity? I think this being the coronation as an opportunity to have a debate about the role of the monarchy in a modern democracy, inheritance tax rules and multi-generational land ownership. Well, I completely agree, and the very reason I'm doing things like this is to engage in those questions and debate. We have to understand what we have here in a modern democracy. It's a constitutional monarchy, and actually the beginning of the coronation is what's called the acclamation. There is a moment when the monarch is presented to the congregation and implicitly to the country, and people have to give their consent. The Archbishop said, you know, essentially like a kind of a marriage. Do you take this person to be your monarch? And everybody ceremonially will say yes. Well, do we give our consent? And is it an informed consent? And I would argue, whether you are for or against the monarchy, we certainly don't have all the information that we should have about its influence. The number of pieces of legislation during the reign of the late Queen that were changed or amended if they affected Crown estates and so on. The fact that the monarch has sovereign immunity. They are immune from law. They can't be tried in a law court. Things like this. They don't pay inheritance tax. You know, the royal family will go off to food banks for photo ops. But, you know, is that not just entire hypocrisy when there's so much wealth within the royal family? It's style over significant and profound substance. So absolutely, I think whether you're for or against the monarchy, we must be informed as citizens in a modern democracy. And we haven't been. Next question. Will Charles's coronation have anywhere near the same effect as the Queen's funeral? So Charles's coronation is the third in a line of royal events over the last year. So of course we had the Platinum Jubilee, then the Queen's funeral, and of course now the coronation. Now, all of them are doing different things, although ultimately they're all intended to unite the nation, to focus the nation on the monarchy and the royal family, and as far as the palace would hope, reaffirm the bonds between the monarchy and its people. I don't think we're going to see anything quite like the Queen's funeral probably ever again in our lifetime in terms of a royal event. It was a moment of international mourning and focus. I think people, whether they be pro or against the monarchy, did respect this woman who had given her life of service. And I think it really was an incredible occasion. Of course, that we went over 10 days. The coronation is going to be very different. Yes, for most people, we haven't seen a coronation before. The last one was in 1953. So I think it will be interesting. I don't think Charles commands anywhere near the kind of affection as the Queen did. So I think the question for the palace, and of course their great hope and fear, will be, how is the coronation received? Will there be the cheering crowds? Will there be people who engage and, you know, celebrate? Or will there, as is being suggested, perhaps be even some protests and or a sense that actually, you know, people are not really that bothered, and overall a kind of sense of apathy? So no, I don't think, apart from the fact that it's a bank holiday, it's a time for families to get together, for communities to get together, I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the focus and attention that we saw for the Queen's funeral. Thank you for all of your questions. I think whether you are for or against the monarchy, the coronation will be an interesting event. There is going to be all kinds of history, centuries old, but with a few modern twists. And it remains to be seen whether this will be perhaps the beginning of the end of the monarchy as we've known it, or perhaps an occasion that re-engages people